My name is Darran Anderson. I'm the Director of Strategy and Innovation at TxDOT. We're the last panel of the day, the last of the forum, and we're going to send you out with an uplifting message related to safety as well as our concerns about operating the system and all of the strategic initiatives that we have in the department. I'm very fortunate to have a strong panel today representing industry, academia, as well as the department. To my immediate left, we have Jeff Adler, who's the Vice President of Intelligent Transportation Systems and Solution Consulting for Kapsch Group. They're a global technology corporation focused in transportation, and they work on digitalization as well as mobility solutions and predominantly intelligent transportation systems. Next to him is Katie Turnbull, who is the Executive Associate Director of the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, TTI. And she's also the Executive Professor of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning as a part of the Architectural College at Texas A&M. And then finally, Quincy Allen, who is our Director of District Operations for the entirety of all 25 districts in TxDOT. Before we get into the panel, each one of them have a short presentation. A few shaping thoughts that I've tried to capture is many times technology has been mentioned in the panels and yesterday as well as today. James Bass started the forum with a Happy New Year. I'm going to go a little further and I'm going to tell you welcome to the third decade of the 21st century. And there's meaning behind that. And it is, many of us, I think most all of us in the audience and up here have, spent some part of our life, if not most of our life, growing up in the 20th century. But, time flew by, we blinked, and 2 decades are gone now, and we are well into the 21st century. And so we have to begin to ask ourselves, what can we do better now in this century that we may need to advance in ways that shape how we address mobility as well as safety in our department, but for transportation in the state as a whole and as well as the nation. I'm graced by the vision of the commission and by James's vision to have the opportunity for the department to think, what else? What else is out there? What are long-term concerns that we might think about? And how can that apply to the department? Those are things like Chairman Canales talking about diversifying our portfolio, or multiple individuals talking about what are we going to do about electric vehicles and its relationship to our resources, and we're working with DMV to help identify possible options for things like that. But at the same time, I'm charged to look nearer term at things that can be applied to our system now that can help advance what we do and apply incremental improvements. There was a question about cell phones, actually a couple times in the last day and a half. And as I thought, it's pretty likely that no one has a rotary phone in their house anymore. They probably don't even have a push-button landline. They probably don't have an old Razor or a flip phone. And most all of you probably don't even have a phone that's 5 years old, a smartphone that's more than 5 years old now. But even though those were rapid changes, and many people consider those revolutionary changes, the baseline is they're still communications devices, they're information devices. So while the technology seems to advance rapidly in our lifetimes, there's still an underlying capability that technology provides that's been consistent over a great period of time. And I think that's a great analogy as the chairman spoke about advancements in mobility. He drew us back and he said, it's a run. We're still going to provide the system that we provided for a long time. We may incrementally improve it, and you may see new mobility solutions or new technologies come into play over time. But that base mission and not only designing, constructing, but also maintaining that capability is a long-term part of our future. And we're just, my role in the department is to help enhance that. So I focus on things like advancing innovation and collaboration, as Federal Highways Administrator Nason said this morning. And how can we make what we do better and safer? And I've heard several times in the last day and a half that technology may be the solution. Well, I would argue that technology is seldom the solution in and of itself. It's a tool, it's a capability, that enhances our quality of life or enhances our ability to do our operations, especially in the transportation arena. But it's dependent upon great leadership, it's dependent upon a vision, and it's dependent upon having good policy to enable that. And as an example of when that doesn't necessarily always work is when you have disruptive technologies like scooters get introduced before people are ready to think through the larger aspect of how do they integrate with a system in a particular city. And I think a lot of the startups and disruptors out there, they're going to continue to do that, but there have been some early lessons learned in some of these innovative technologies in the last 5 to 10 years that they have to reach out early and engage government, engage research, and engage other industry partners to have a comprehensive and safe solution that's more adoptable and valuable to overall society. So our focus today is really on identifying and discussing near-term emerging technologies and how they can improve safety on our roads, as well as our overall safety and mobility and movement of goods. Naturally, as an outgrowth of that, if you improve safety, if you reduce crashes, there's an added benefit many times in reducing congestion, improving traffic flow, and all of those complement each other. But again, the base of a lot of the technology improvements center around safety advances or quality of life advances for the public. We may also discuss capabilities as it relates to quality of life, as it relates to potential policy issues, if we get the opportunity to do that. And we'll come back, I think, to talk about the safety spectrum that Mark Williams talked about earlier this morning. So with that, I'm going to first turn to Jeff and ask him to speak about what's happening with Kapsch and what his visions or thoughts are about international and national level deployment of safety and technology solutions.
Thank you, Darren. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'd like to thank Darren and the Forum Committee for inviting Kapsch to participate and share the stage with such a distinguished panel of experts. It really is an exciting time for transportation technology innovation. We're witnessing the emergence of what we like to call a connected mobility ecosystem that will dramatically improve transportation efficiency and safety. Through the convergence of digital infrastructure, advanced cognitive technologies, and advanced business intelligence tools, we can process vast amount of real-time and historical information, predict future conditions, improve communications between vehicles and system users. This connected mobility ecosystem enables us to develop targeted safety applications for personal vehicles, transit vehicles, commercial vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists. And over the next 5 years, I expect we'll see even greater improvements in safety than we have in our history. Today, there are numerous examples of innovative safety applications that have been enabled by connected vehicle technology and have been deployed across the country. So we've witnessed things like vehicle-to-vehicle applications for collision warning, end-of-queue warning, applications to improve work zone safety, and I think Katie will be speaking about those, location-based services, the ability to bring roadside data into the vehicle and onto mobile platforms. What I'd like to do this morning is talk about two specific technologies that I think will have really an important impact over the next 5 years and show promise for improving safety. So how many of you remember the 2002 movie Minority Report in the precogs, right? The whole movie was about predicting murders before they happened. Well, that concept has actually come to transportation through predictive analytics and new machine learning models. So in Southern Nevada, the Regional Transportation Commission, along with the State Highway Patrol, are using predictive analytics to improve safety. They've deployed a platform that combines machine learning algorithms and is able to process numerous amounts of data about traffic, events, incidents, and weather. Data that's been gathered from numerous sources, including traditional sensors, third-party data providers, social media, crowdsourcing, and the vehicles themselves. And what this platform can do is actually predict events before they happen, identify areas of concern. So when this system alerts transportation system managers and operators of impending problems, those operators can go out and proactively take steps. They can disseminate traveler information, maybe position state police vehicles. And the trial that was conducted last year showed really incredible results. 91% of speeding vehicles slowed down to less than 65 miles per hour. There was a 17% reduction in the number of incidents, and there was a 12-minute improvement in response times. And think about if we could extrapolate those results across the country, the savings of lives and the reduction of costs that we could experience. The second technology I want to talk about really follows up on the comments that Nicole from FHWA made earlier today about pedestrian safety. We know that pedestrians are really among our most vulnerable system users. Pedestrian deaths increased 4% last year, and pedal cyclist deaths increased by 10% last year. Connected vehicle technology can help reverse this trend. Today's cities across California, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina are all piloting new pedestrian safety systems that are designed to help impaired pedestrians safely navigate through intersections. And what these systems do is they integrate with the traffic controller, and they take data from the traffic controller, and they combine it with information about the intersection and the geometries of the crosswalks. And a mobile application provides an interactive interface for these pedestrians. The app allows pedestrians that have real-time intersection information to know when they reached a crosswalk, and it provides them with audio and visual cues about the geometry of the intersection and the crosswalk. The mobile application also includes a virtual pedestrian crossing button, so that the pedestrian doesn't have to look around the roadside and find the button. They can just push the pedestrian button on their phone. And the app will tell the pedestrian when it's safe or not safe to cross the intersection. And finally, once they're in the crosswalk, the solution uses positional correction algorithms to ensure that that pedestrian safely stays within the crosswalk. And all of this information gets packaged up into pedestrian safety warning messages, and with connected vehicle technology can be broadcast to vehicles and pedestrians that are in the vicinity. It's really, technologies like this are going to help drive us towards our Vision Zero. I just want to finish my comments this morning and talk about a tragedy that happened to the Kapsch family last week. Last Friday evening, a stepson of a Kapsch employee was killed in Houston. They were on a motorcycle and they were stopped at a signalized intersection. A large SUV came barreling down the arterial and hit the motorcycle from behind. It also hit another car that was in the intersection. The stepson of our employee was killed and numerous other people were hurt, and the SUV just drove off in a hit-and-run fashion. This is one of many tragedies that occur on our roadways on a daily basis, and we all know families who have been devastated by these types of transportation incidents. I have no doubt that with technology, within 5 years, we can help reduce the impacts of these types of events. Imagine a smart intersection of the future that can use camera analytics, advanced prediction analytics, and connected technologies so we can predict hazards before they happen, and we can issue warnings to vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists to reduce these types of incidents from happening. I think the future is bright and the future is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That moving. And you spoke to advanced warning. I mean, there's even opportunity now that signal could have gone into that SUV and automatically cause it to apply its brakes before the accident even occurred. And that's not going to happen tomorrow, but the potential is there. And I really think it was fascinating what you drove home about the analytics overall, as well as the pedestrian work. TTI's worked on some pedestrian work, and I know Katie's got some things to talk about as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Darran. It's a pleasure to participate in this session. What I'd like to do is cover a little bit of a bridge here, some examples of activities that are going on right now, maybe some suggestions for the future, and then let Quincy dive a little bit deeper into more specific examples that are underway in the state. As Darran mentioned, as we think about technology, which has been mentioned, I think, in almost every session yesterday and today in some fashion, it's really like transportation, it's not an end in and of itself. It's an enabler to help us make things safer, enhance mobility, and reduce congestion. So as we think about technology with transportation in the state, I think it's how we, again, use it to benefit the system, benefit society, and really meet that mission, goal, vision of connecting you with Texas, or connecting freight with Texas. Certainly, smart work zones are one topic area that there's been a lot of activity underway, and as needed. We've got a lot of construction projects and reconstruction projects underway, being able to use data from sensors and cameras to provide motorists and truckers in real-time information on end-of-queue warnings, or just travel time through the work zone has been very beneficial. 35 is now fairly instrumented in sections in Central Texas, and provides that ability to communicate on a regular basis with users on what their expectations can be to pre-plan trips, but also what their expectations are using changeable message signs and other communication devices when they're on the road to provide that information. We also heard, obviously, yesterday about the Permian Promise, but as we all know, those types of developments have been occurring in the state for a long, long time. The Eagle Ford Shale just a couple years ago. So using technology to both help, again, identify where those crash locations might be possible, but then also maybe more important, to provide solutions in the energy sector areas are a key area that we've been assisting the department in, as well as the local communities. You heard yesterday about some of the activities going on in Texas ports, and providing real-time traffic information across the Texas-Mexico border ports of entry. Again, an activity that's really been underway for a number of years, but allows trucking companies and shippers and carriers to better plan their trip, both in the time, the days of the week, but also providing that real-time information as they approach the ports. I think one of the things that was mentioned just a little bit in the last session is the whole rural area applications for technology. And one thing to think about a little bit more is rural health care. You may or may not know, but 20 hospitals in rural areas have closed in Texas over the past 4 to 5 years. Not a trend that's unique to Texas. It's happening throughout the country. But Texas, obviously, with a lot of rural space, is maybe having a bigger impact. About 40 counties in the state do not have a physician, and even more counties don't have an obstetrician. So if you're visiting those counties, rural Texas is important to us, both to fuel the rest of the state and the country, but also to feed the rest of the state and the country. And it's also the areas we go to for recreation and visitation, tourism. And so making sure that those parts of the state continue to have health care delivery, I think is going to be a challenge as we move forward. Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Texas A&M Health Science Center are looking at what does the future of healthcare in rural areas look like, and certainly transportation and technology are key parts of what that future might look like, whether it's telemedicine or smarter ambulances or better crash prediction on where those activities might occur. So again, I think an area that's worth some additional discussion as we think about technology. As Jeff mentioned, certainly smart transit, smart intersection, making things safer for bikes and pedestrians is important. We have things like collision warning systems that are available for buses, and those have been piloted, including on the Texas A&M University campus, as well as some of the major metropolitan areas. Using sensors and cameras indicates to the driver if a motorcyclist, a cyclist, a skateboarder, a pedestrian is getting too close to the vehicle. A little yellow person lights up on the dashboard. If it looks like a crash might be imminent, a red light goes off and a buzzer goes off, again helping reduce the potential for collisions. Looking at smart intersections and how you can warn pedestrians and bicyclists of turning buses or turning vehicles through an annunciator system or additional signs was mentioned earlier today about some of the flashing beacons. And then looking at first and last mile with autonomous shuttles. Again, those have been piloted in the Arlington Entertainment District, Frisco, some of the first ones in the country and the state certainly to use those on public roads. Again, piloted on the A&M University campus, Texas Southern University, TSU, and Houston Metro are doing some trials in the Houston area, again, as a way of introducing that autonomous technology, but focusing on enhancing mobility, that first last mile between a light rail station, in the case of Houston, or regular route transit services and those types of things. So maybe a couple things to think about. I think there's certainly lots of opportunities to look at big data to reduce roadway fatalities, as Administrator Nason said, looking and digging deeper into data to target solutions. We've looked at the potential, for example, and think there are opportunities to use some of the data that's now coming off of connected cars and cloud computing to dig deeper, take a look at, again, some data analytics that might help us look at where crashes might occur. Obviously, we get good crash data, but that telematic data can give us hard braking, for example, that might indicate areas that crashes haven't specifically occurred, but could potentially occur. And so again, I think lots of opportunities to look at additional data that could benefit the various agencies throughout the state in identifying, targeting improvements for those areas. In closing, I think Texas continues to be just great position to both continue to develop opportunities and to implement new technologies. Certainly, we are an entrepreneurial state. The public agencies work well together. We have great universities. We have great private sector partners, and we've got the mechanisms, I think, to work together, to partner. TxDOT has certainly taken the lead on many of those initiatives. I think a number of you probably remember 4, 5, 6 years ago, the whole Smart City Challenge. Austin was one of the finalists. It wasn't selected as the final Smart City. That went to Columbus, Ohio, but Austin really brought that back to Texas, and with TxDOT started the Innovation Alliance that many of you are participating in, and it's really the major metropolitan areas in the state, the smaller, medium-sized communities. Bryan College Station has a team or has been actively involved in sharing ideas, meeting on a regular basis, holding conferences, the Mobility Summit that was here. And I would suggest, maybe in a biased fashion, that probably more has happened through that Texas Innovation Alliance, and we've seen more progress that in many respects Columbus has managed to accomplish even with their designation. So I think the resources are here within the state, the innovation is here within the state to make it happen. As Ashby Johnson and a couple other people mentioned yesterday, I think we have to be careful as we move forward and think about potential unintended consequences and try to make sure we mitigate those before they happen. We certainly don't want to see vehicle miles of travel increase. We certainly don't want to see safety decrease. There are questions about the impact on land use. But again, I think we're smart enough to make sure that we address those, that we make sure technology is available to all parts of society, whether it's low income or individuals with disabilities, the unbanked. And so as we move forward, I think the future is bright for technology to continue to enhance and make the system safer, increase mobility, and again, decrease congestion. So look forward to the question and answer period.
Thank you, comprehensive. Quincy's here to give us what's happening now, what's being used, what are we deploying, and how is that already working for us, and how does that lead us in the next 5 years?
Thank you, Darran. All righty, really quickly, this is something new that we have seen developed in the Houston district over the last year or so. Roadway flood warning systems. This comes out of our TransStar consortium. They operate obviously out of the TransStar building. But in that consortium, there's TxDOT, Harris County, and its partner, Harris County Flood Control District, Metro, and the City of Houston. One thing we were noticing with some of the events that we've had in the last couple of years that involved a lot of rain, whether that was Tax Day, Memorial Day, Harvey, or you pick the storm, some of our street map software was not picking up areas of localized flooding. And we have a weatherman at Harris County, Jeff Linder. You may have seen him on the national news. Tremendously bright, practical-minded. And he got to looking at what was happening on that. And those little round gray circles in the middle of that slide represent areas that have experienced a 1-inch rain in 15 minutes. Now, he took that concept, you're going to get an inch in 15 minutes, what areas it is going to impact very quickly. And this is something that is just so innovative. They were able to develop with our TTI partners a way to overlay that over the traffic map, and so that our customer base that's using those tools were able to quickly see areas to avoid. And you'll notice that they're not on TxDOT systems, but we see the area as the community and that needs to be cared for, if you will, in an event like this. And the other thing, a 1-inch rain in 15 minutes, many of you are thinking, man, that's a lot, and it is. It will overwhelm a system even as robust as one you might find in Houston. The pictures on the right of that slide are some pictures from the Transtar app. If you come into the city of Houston, hit transtar.org and you'll be able to access some of those details. All righty, wrong way driving. We've spent a lot of time and effort working on this. I direct your attention to the left side of that slide. You'll see a TxDOT vehicle there. That person's not inebriated. We were using that as a problem. But in order to do this at night, we needed the safety of the vehicle in all seriousness, where we could turn the lights on. We've got reflectors. You'll see the sign that has the light bulbs on it. You might not be able to read it. That sign says wrong way. And what we were running into, particularly in downtown Houston on the east side of town, and that's where the baseball park is, the frontage roads are not continuous in that area, and there's a lot of major arterial streets that tend to provide that function, whether it's Hamilton or Jackson. Those are streets that run north and south near the baseball park. Unfortunately, when you're on a city street, you pull up to an intersection where a person's coming off of IH 69 on a ramp, there's no clear indication there that you can't turn left and go up that ramp. And if you've been overserved somewhere, it might be a little easier for you to do that. And so we've been working very diligently to address situations like this. Certainly behind the ballpark is not the only place. We've got a lot of ramps and frontage road situations where it's easy to get twisted up if you're not from the area, or if obviously you're inebriated. So a couple of things we did. We lit the signs up. We put red markings on the pavement, if you will, turn the two CRs backwards. So if you headed up immediately you're seeing raised pavement markers that are red, and hopefully we were trying to trigger a reaction was, hey, stop, what's going on here? I'm in the wrong place. The other thing, we took it a step further. We linked this to our traffic management system, Transtar, and there's 3 sensors there. That red light has the third one. If you clip that third light, your picture's taken. Immediately a message goes to Transtar and saying, hey, we've got a wrong way driver heading into the main lanes. And the message goes to the floor. The police are contacted. The DMS boards, the dynamic message signs, begin flashing, warning potential problem here with the wrong way driver. And so far, so good. We're making advancements. When you're dealing with people that are inebriated and going the wrong way, we still got work to do. If you look at the lower corner, that's the DMS board that message wrong way driver reported, use extreme caution. Begin to look out around you. It's a problem. Okay, on the left, one of Katie's slides too, smart work zones. We're seeing those all over the state of Texas now. Certainly they're not exclusive to Houston. I know the Yoakum District's using it up on 10 as we go toward Columbus, and this may have started with Stan and his folks in Waco when we were working on I-35. Those messages are particularly helpful as a lot of our customer base comes upon our work zones and may not have realized that there was a major construction effort underway. Those messages, stop, traffic 2 miles ahead, good reminder. You know, so many times if we're going into places that we're not familiar with and we get in a little bit of a, I don't know, got the cruise control set and we're just cruising down the road, we come over the hill and there's a work zone that's been set up and it's created a traffic queue. These particular types of signs are tremendously valuable to help with that effort. All righty, signal phasing and timing, connected vehicles. We're kind of excited about this. We've actually got one of these set up in the Houston district on 1960. And what it enables to do is the controller for the signal will be able to begin to communicate with some of the future technology in a lot of the vehicles. I worked with Uganda on this, and I said, man, where are we seeing this? He said, well, a lot of the cars coming up have got what appears to be an iPad. If you've ridden in a Tesla, for instance, you know, it's got one dashboard, and right in the middle of it is an iPad that controls everything from the air conditioner to the speedometer. Anyway, as you're going forward, we're able to communicate with the vehicles or connect with them and give them information about what to expect as you approach the intersection. How much green time you've got, how fast you're going, what's the speed limit, do you need to slow down? Folks, this is the next generation, and it's here with us, and it's beginning to appear in some of our, I guess, in some of our major districts. I know they're in Houston. All right, this is really cool as well. Freeway Response system. I give Uganda credit for working on this, again, with our TTI partners. The upper graph line there that drops into that box, that's the speed limit, the speed of the traffic on I-10 West between Grand Parkway and Beltway 8. And if you folks are familiar with I-10 West, you know it can be a pretty congested corridor. When the speed of that corridor drops to 25 miles an hour, you get into that blue box that you can see sort of to the right of that screen. In order to relieve that congestion, sensors detect that movement, and we begin to increase the green time on the frontage road signals, okay? That's about an 8-mile section there, but if we can increase the speed of the traffic is moving on the frontage roads, we increase the capacity and begin to give a little relief to the main lanes, and that's the technical strategy of this system. Alrighty.
And you say that was the last one. All right. As a reminder, thank you to those that are following us on Facebook. Hashtag TechDOT, TechDOT. Welcome your questions. In fact, I can ask tons of questions, but I think it's more pertinent and valuable if we make sure we answer what the public or our audience wants to know relative to what's going on. You've heard a number of examples. I'll start with asking each of you, from those or from something you haven't mentioned, let's narrow it down to one thing. If you could see us implement or put one thing onto our system in the next 5 years that would improve safety through technology solutions, what would that be? Because then that becomes my homework and others in the department. We'll start with you, Jeff.
So one of the areas that I think we really can apply technology is for first responders. We've heard in the conference that they play a really important job out there to clear incidents. Their lives are at stake. Using connected vehicle technology, we have the ability to deploy emergency vehicle preemption, which can really reduce the impacts for these first responders. There's an estimated, on a yearly basis, about 46,000 crashes and nearly 20,000 people that are injured in these. And I know the federal government is planning to invest close to $38 million in a first responder program. So I think that's one of the areas that I think in the short run we can really benefit from.
Okay, Katie?
So I think a lot of the technology focused on the intersections is a key that benefits just numerous groups and benefits all sizes of communities. I think we all have been in that situation where we get to a red light and we look around and there's absolutely no one else there. So to the extent we can phase time better, and a lot of that technology is available right now, I think we can make significant improvements for the traveling public and for freight movement through our communities.
I'm going to jump off the intersection for a minute and go up to some of these bigger projects that we're developing. I'm seeing our friend Doug Begley here from the Chronicle, and he reminds me that he often quotes me. He says, Quincy wants the traffic moving forward, not side to side. Let me dig into that just a little bit. Doug, how are you?
That's a good point.
We're developing a pretty big job in the Houston district on I-45, and we've spent a lot of time working on driver expectancy, trying to get the drivers in the right lane at the right time so that they can make the right decision. Now that requires a lot of things to work well together. Number one, the signing and the information effort. You know, hey, where are you going and how are you going to get there? The second thing is making sure you've got enough space there to make a weave or maneuver, change lanes, that sort of thing. We tend to get in trouble in highly congested areas when we have to make snap decisions at the last minute. I'm constantly impressed by the engineers that are developing these larger projects and how they're looking at lane assignments and the width of the auxiliary lanes and how to sign for the exit ramp and which side the exit ramp's on. You know, we've got a certain expectation from the customer base that we're serving. Things are going to be in certain places, and we move those to different places. You know, we run the risk of confusing someone. So I'm excited about the amount of time that TxDOT is spending to get the decision-making process in a situation where a person can make a decision without having to make a snap maneuver in his vehicle or her vehicle, and can keep going straight without having to make a last-minute lane change.
So that's great. And so we had two intersections, one on bigger planning. All three of you, as well as Administrator Nason this morning, talked about the use of data analytics and how that can help focus some of our safety efforts as well as our overall improvement efforts. We have an audience question that kind of speaks to that, which is, how can the private and public sector work together on using data to save lives? And I'll open it up to any of you. Anybody want to take that one first?
I'll start, and then others can chime in. I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think, as we all know, with private sector data, a lot of it is proprietary. So working through the non-disclosure agreements and getting, from a public sector side, getting access to that data is a first hurdle, if you will. But that can be overcome, and those agreements can be put in place. I think there are a lot of very rich data sets out there. I mean, people know now a lot of INREX data, a lot of HERE companies that HERE here that most public sector agencies are working with now to get more robust data sets. Streetlight is another example of a third-party data provider. As I mentioned earlier, I think there are even more opportunities to work with some of the automotive companies and others to get that on vehicle information and use that. So it's really working through those ways that you can get access to that data. It's making sure it's anonymous. We don't want to identify any individual. That's not the intent. We want to just access it to be able to use it. And then I think some small pilots, some test cases using it in different applications is probably the next logical way to go. So I think it's not insurmountable, but it takes some time to work through those agreements.
I'd just like to add to that, it's not only the data itself. You know, there is a lot of data that's available. It's also the way that we combine the data and use the data in various applications. And I think government agencies specifically have been taking the approach to move towards more open architected solutions, to be able to take data from multiple places and encourage the fusing of that data, which is critical to understand current and future conditions. In addition, having architectures that support the integration of multiple systems. So instead of having one large legacy application that an agency uses, being able to have a more flexible and open and modular approach so that, if TTI develops an application or the private sector develops an application, we can easily link those applications together and improve our capabilities.
So Quincy, I'm going to change it because people use the term data, and I envision ones and zeros, but back to the comment on leadership that I made at the beginning, when you're in a district, what, in the simplest terms, do you need to know about your system, be it the pavement, the bridges, how do you get information that enables you to focus on this is where I need to look and this is what I need to work on? What kind of types of information lead you to that?
We get information from a lot of places. I was thinking about that this morning. Our frontline people are so critical, our maintenance employees and our construction people. We've got to look for areas that we're having problems, whether it's a defect or whatever, and areas that we can improve, areas where we can add rumble strips or light the chevrons up, or maybe our edges are not exactly where they need to be, where the dirt may have washed away from the edge and we need to level it up so that we don't get into an edge situation that somebody might lose control over, for instance. Certainly we do fatality accident reviews. Many of those, we see a lot of things that there's a lot of driver errors, but we're always on the lookout for things that are giving us problems. The other thing is we've got a tremendous customer base, and we get a lot of calls about, hey, I can't see this, I can't, your striping's not good. We do night inspections with our maintenance crews and our area engineers and things. Those have got to continue and have got to be diligent, and record those. That's where we get a lot of the good data. But we do listen to the customer base. If you see something that doesn't make sense or it's just not working like you think it should, give us a call. Many times there are things that need to be addressed.
So Jeff, we were talking earlier about knowing what kind of information leads them to making those improvements, be it either a maintenance improvement or a safety improvement, or even just clearing due to weather conditions. What's happening in the auto manufacturer space? What kind of information do the vehicles, current day vehicles, not autonomous vehicles, but just now current systems have on board that we might be able to take advantage of?
Well, there's a lot of data that vehicles collect on a regular basis. We don't have access to that data, which we will with connected vehicle technology, right? Either through new in-vehicle systems that will broadcast the information, or by dongles or other plugins that can get access to that information. I think to me, what's interesting is not the types of information, but the amount of data that's going to be generated, right? So we can have information about whether wheels are slipping on the roadway, if people have put on or off their wipers, if there are other emissions issues with vehicles. The problem is, what are we going to do with all of that data that gets created? No agency wants to be inundated with terabytes of data on a daily basis. We need to have better aggregation systems to turn that data into actionable information. And I think there's going to be a lot of attempts to build those types of systems. We're seeing it from the Fords and the other manufacturers of how do I really turn data into actionable information.
Yeah, I was reading yesterday, it was 15 terabytes of data potentially per vehicle on a given day. And the challenge as we talk in the innovation lines is how are we going to work with industry and the federal government and others to consume that all in maybe a single repository of information and share what's useful to specifically your particular challenges. Right. Katie, you touched on the rural areas. I'm gonna ask you again, because too often as we talk technology, we get really focused on the metro and the very urban view of it, but there's a great value to tech. In fact, I'd point out that automation really, the rural agricultural efforts of the state and the nation lead in automation versus what we're doing currently with AV trucks and vehicles. So what can we do to make sure safety and technology enables the rural area as well?
Well, yeah, actually, you're absolutely right. If you look at agriculture these days, most of the different tractors and other types of machinery have automated features in it that are probably more high tech than many of the cars that we drive. So one, it's already out there. Two, just as you say, I think there are a lot of opportunities. One for non-emergency, but also for emergency responders. How do we maybe look at smarter ambulances, or identifying as those ambulances or vehicles are coming back where the critical safety areas are that they need to worry about? You know, we talk about smart dirt roads. Are there different technologies that we could be using? We really haven't talked much about drones or SUVs or UAVs, excuse me, or urban, mobility by air. Those aren't that far-fetched, maybe. And some groups we talked. I think one of the speakers yesterday mentioned that the Dallas area Uber Elevate is looking at some things in the Hillwood area. So I think we may see some of those. Certainly, if you're looking at medical supplies, there are firms now that are in South Africa are delivering blood by drones. Maybe there's some of those applications. I think the public willingness for drones might be more amenable to emergency types of things than, just my neighbor wants his pizza faster, and so it's going to get delivered next door by a drone. So I think there are a whole host of things that we could be looking at in rural areas.
Fantastic. Now, there is an audience question I want to get to, so leave that one up for me. But before I come off this thought, I can talk about this for hours, and I do want to point out that our futures team is in the back, about centered on this right side of the room, and I'm sure they're happy to stay here and answer a ton of questions about the broader aspects that Katie brought up as well. Quincy, on our fleet, we have Mobileye technology, and that technology is not unusual to some of the personal vehicles that are coming out now. Can you kind of talk about what Mobileye does for us, and then how might that all the same kind of solutions help with regular drivers?
Thank you for that question, Darran. Mobileye is awesome, and I can remember when Dalton from heads up our fleet operations division came to us and asked us to do a pilot, and I said, sure, anything that improves safety. I didn't know Mobileye from, whatever. But the fleet folks don't disappoint. They brought something to us that really worked well. That happened at a point in time, and about a year later, it finally made it to the district I was in. And I get a call from area engineer that says, hey, this Mobileye deal is not working. And I said, great, let's go for a ride. Takes me for a ride. Man, that thing's going off like crazy, beeping and buzzing, and he said it's picking up the speed limit signs on the ramps and stuff, and so I went back to the deal, and I called our fleet guy and said, hey, you got to check this out. And I should have been paying closer attention. In about 45 minutes, they went right to the vehicle, checked it out, and said, Quincy, you got a problem with your driver. And they're right. So the point, to go to the question and to be more specific in the answer, Mobileye is a neat system. If you begin to drift out of your lane, it's an audible alert. It's a beep, 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 beep. If you're going too fast, if you're getting too close, those sorts of things are beep. If we take a step further and go to some of our vehicles that are in the fleet, there are manufacturer systems there that are also really neat. I don't know, I guess Toyota has one, for instance. If you set your cruise control and you get too close to the next vehicle, it begins to slow you down, and it's not a distraction. I think the beeping and things like that, those are audible things, and if I hear that immediately, I know that I'm out of the lane. The other thing is some of the messaging that comes across in these systems, it's usually in a place that doesn't take your eye too far off the line. It needs to be on the line. In other words, it's right there at almost where the speedometer would be, for instance. It seems to me that there's a lot of science and engineering that goes into these decisions about how to put these warning systems together and where to locate them to minimize the distraction effort that's there. The last thing I'd like to end with is I give a shout out to a couple of people. Maria Aponte is one of the best Mobileye drivers I've ever ridden with. She's the assistant area engineer in South Harris. And I rode with her, and for 45 minutes, we only had one beep, and it was pretty cool. And then when we did SASHTO, we had a maintenance operator that drove us up on the Fred Hartman. If you guys went for that tour, you know it was a lot of fun. But that man didn't have any beeps on his run. And so Mobileye not only gives us guidance on when to get back in line, but if you want to challenge yourself, see how long you can go and keep that thing just quiet as it can be. So thank you for the question.
You know, so when we think about safety, we're not just thinking about public safety. We're thinking about the safety of our people in TxDOT, as well as our contractors and everybody that works within the transportation system. And so we are also looking to solution for technologies that enhance their safety, be it from driving, be it from operations within the work zone. You saw the connected work zone or the smart work zone slides. In both cases of that and the wrong way driving, we have, those came from our research efforts in the department, and while those are being put onto the system now, we have ongoing research efforts that are taking that to the next level, which is the connected piece of it. So if I have a wrong way driver, it gets reported to all the vehicles around it through the connected communication solutions, not necessarily just through DMS signs, as an example. Now, on the question, and Quincy was kind of leading into it, was what approaches are being taken to balance the need for providing in-car information to drivers with the potential for creating distractions? We kind of talked about that on the last panel. A lot of the focus was on texting, but we also know a lot of people use their cellular phones for maps, for getting around. And so how do we balance that, and what can be done to enable that, but yet prevent or at least limit the other uses? And Jeff, you're probably most familiar with that.
Sure. Look, the simple answer is that we want people to keep their hands on the wheel and their eyes on the road, right? And so how do we ensure that that happens? And there are a number of things that are happening. You know, vehicle manufacturers are looking at ways to bring information to the driver's eyes with heads-up displays, as an example, a lot of auditory information so that you're not being distracted. You know, app manufacturers, if you use Waze or Google, right, most of the time you listen to information about diversion paths or routing. And there's a lot of work going on both by the research community and by the manufacturers to continue to improve that and to try to reduce the distractions.
Now, I'm going to shift completely. We had an earlier question that asked about the discussion that Mark Williams had with the administrator about the spectrum issue that we're facing as it relates to connected vehicles. And I'll ask you again, Jeff, to just start very simple terms. What did they really mean by that issue?
Sure. So, the easiest way to explain it is that in 1999, the FCC set aside 75 megahertz of the 5.9 band to support transportation safety. And that was focused around a technology called DSRC, the Dedicated Short-Range Communications. And the idea was that we would be developing new technologies that use DSRC to do vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure safety. From 1999, it really took a while for this program to really take off, and it wasn't until the 2010s that we started to see onboard units and roadside units and the federal government supporting the development of applications. 20 years is a long time, and along came some new technologies. Primarily, we've all heard of 5G technology, which has led to the development of connected V2X. And so now there's an alternative technology. And so the FCC earlier this month decided that there wasn't enough progress made with DSRC, that they were going to take that 75 megahertz band and they were going to split it into two. They were going to allocate 45 megahertz to big business to use for communications and entertainments, basically making more bandwidth available for those applications, and limit the safety to only 30 megahertz of the band. And the notice of proposed rulemaking is currently out for people to comment on. And I'd just like to say that none of us want to be in a position where we have interference with safety applications. And limiting safety applications to a small part of the band and the risk of other technologies that could be interfering with safety is really scary. And so I would encourage everybody to look into this and support transportation safety.
Okay, y'all have done quite a bit of research regarding connected and the communications that enable that. Give us just a couple of examples of where things that TTI has done that would have been impacted had we been facing this at that time.
Yeah, well, actually, we have some right now that are sort of on hold pending what might be the
Even
outcome
better.
and what the process is to get approval to use that portion of the spectrum right now. We've got actually one of the smart intersection projects that is in the rollout development stage, actually putting it on a real intersection as opposed to just one of the design intersections we're just going through. We were ready to turn the switch really next month, and we're looking at it. I think the same thing is probably the case with some of the signal timing. I know there's one along 105 in the Conroe area that again is getting ready to move forward. So I think the comment was made that it has, and Administrator Nason made it this morning, it has taken time, as always is the case, to move things through the process and get actual projects out there using it. And then I think also we don't always do a good job of communicating what's been done and the benefits of what's been done with different projects. And so, making sure that the FCC and others are aware of that. The Wyoming situation where there was a crash that I think most people feel could have been avoided if a fatality, if again the technology was in place, is one of those that would be in question with the proposed rulemaking. So.
This impacts multiple TxDOT projects. We have we haven't even touched on freight, but we have a connected freight proposal that was awarded by Federal Highways that gives us a grant to develop multiple different means to communicate information about our system to the greater freight industry. And we have a number of freight partners that are on board to do that. And it's inclusive of Houston, it's inclusive of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all the way down 35 to San Antonio and the whole Texas Triangle. And I think we've done a great job of communicating those challenges and what we're trying to achieve within our own circles. But what I'm going to ask Quincy is, how do I communicate the safety benefits of connected technologies to the public? How do I engage them at the ground level and get them interested in what we're trying to do?
My sense is there's a lot of interest in anything that improves the system, and so I think it's mainly just getting our message out there. If we work through our PIO partners and others. As far as freight goes and different things, we have partnerships with freight folks in Houston and are able to communicate about different aspects of the work and what's helpful. I think the younger generation is going to get us in there quicker than anything else. So.
All right, so our time is flying by rapidly, amazingly. So I'm going to ask you speed round. Let's leave these folks with an uplifting message of hope and what can be done, from our vantage point to make our system better, to make safety greater, or make our safer system and make mobility better for the nation and for our state. So what do you see in the near future that we can do to really achieve that?
I think, to me, when we talk about the connected mobility ecosystem and all of the new technologies that are available, we have startup companies, we have research institutions, we have a lot of smart young people who now are looking at this as an opportunity to work in really innovative and fun new technology. And I think we need to really promote transportation safety, and we need to promote these opportunities so that people don't go into finance and other areas, but that there's a lot of valuable opportunities to work in transportation and really change the lives of people.
Yeah. And just to build on that, as I said earlier, I mean, Texas we have the institutions, we have the private sector, we have the entrepreneurial groups, we've got the structure to move forward and make a positive impact. And I think collectively working together, we can continue to do that.
I think we're going to have to continue to push our users, the drivers, to do simple things. The seatbelt, avoid the distracted driving, no DWIs, no driving while intoxicated, and follow the speed limit. Easy to say, hard to do. But our system is not going to be able to work like we're designing it if our drivers are not going to cooperate.
If they don't operate the way they're expected to. Just one day, I think, is what we heard earlier. Just one day can we do it all together, and I'm well in support of that. Again, I want to thank all our panelists. I think, if anything, I hope that you're uplifted by the idea that there are a lot of smart people that are on board with the same thoughts and messages that we have about how we're trying to make transportation safer and improve mobility in the state. And that goes back to the collaboration comment we heard earlier today, that we have seen a great growth in collaboration across the state with all of our local partners, with our research institutions, and with industry coming in, because Texas has told people we're open for innovation. And if they can throw that slide up, I will show that, even though we're near the end. But I actually threw this together several years ago when I was trying to communicate what Texas offers as it relates to innovation and technology, and also why are we so attractive, but to also give a sense of the feel of the challenges we have. So as you look at the eastern seaboard and you look at the Ohio River Valley and you look at the number of square miles that that's my personal drawing, and then you compare that, and I tried to be constrain myself to not make the drawing around the metro areas or the populated areas of Texas too large, but even just drawing very tight lines around some of our corridors, the square miles is larger than that entire eastern seaboard and Ohio River Valley region. So when TxDOT and all our transportation partners are trying to solve for the challenges we've talked about this week, that should give you an aspect of the scale that we're dealing with. Now, the goodness is we work under one common set of rules, we have a common vision, and we offer a range of environments and regions to industry to come out and test out what they're trying to deliver as it relates to innovation. So I think we have a lot of positive messages, as they said, that are being heard nationally about what Texas can do and what we want to do to make our system better. And I think it's a very powerful statement that the governor's office is helping us convey as we reach out to industry. Again, thank you to all our partners for being here today, and well done.
Thank you.